All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, this one's gonna be a little bit different. So check it out, you guys. I'm gonna get straight to it. But before I get into this video, let me make something very clear. Don't get it twisted. I am not jumping on the Danny Masterson bandwagon by no means whatsoever. You won't see me dropping 5 videos about this guy and milking it for all it's worth. Because for one, he's just not that important in my world. And for two, you know how I do it. It's one and done. So I'll be honest with you guys. Before this guy started popping up in my feed, I mean, here I am. I'm over here trying to cut Mexican Mafia videos and I'm doing my research. And every time I jumped on YouTube, this guy kept on popping up in my feed. It wasn't something that was coming out from the mainstream media. It was another YouTube channel that was dropping another video on this guy. But before this guy started popping up in my feed, I didn't know who he was and I didn't know nothing about him. I didn't know nothing about his case. I didn't know what he was convicted of. I didn't even know that he was an actor and that he had a role on that sitcom, that 70s show. So no, I'm not a fan either. But when I read up on the case, and obviously more than his case and all the vile details, was the religious ties that he had to a church called the Church of Scientology. As I started reading it, it blew my mind as it read more like some type of quasi-cult religious sect that was predicated on cloak and dagger secrecy. It's definitely not your traditional uniform type of church that little Sally and Johnny go to on Sunday. This falls on the side of a free-thinking, non-conformist type of church that operates a little different from what you're probably used to. This is a church that discourages and even forbids its members from cooperating with law enforcement and who attempted to silence Masterson's victims. In fact, it was said that when this investigation started on Masterson, that this church stonewalled law enforcement's investigation for almost 20 years. But before I go into this any further, let me just say this. Religion is something that I usually try to stay away from, due in part because I don't want anybody feeling like their beliefs are being dismissed or trampled on. When it comes to people's religious and political beliefs, they tend to place a lot of passion and conviction into how they feel about that stuff. So it's a topic that I usually try to stay away from. But at least for awareness and shedding some light on this subject, I want to talk a little bit about the Church of Scientology and some of the things that I learned. I had honestly never heard about the Church of Scientology. I never heard about this religion before. But then again, there's a lot of religions that I've never heard about. I'm not a religious person. When I was doing time in the Bay, there was a couple of religions that I studied, but it was more for educational purposes. I mean, I always knew that there was a lot of different religious sects and that people find their spiritual beliefs in different types of religion, but this was something that was definitely different. The more I read, the more fascinated I became. So let's get the formalities out the way first. We all know what happened to Danny Masterson. According to what I've been able to gather, in March of 2017, 3 different women filed sexual assault allegations against him. It was also alleged that the sexual assaults took place after Masterson drugged his victims. I don't know what kind of drugs it was. I don't know if he slipped something in their drinks. I don't know how he did it. I didn't get into it that much, but apparently he drugged them. So this is what prompted an investigation by the LAPD. And this is where things start to get interesting. What's noteworthy is that the women that attempted to bring forth their complaints back in 2007, they were silenced by the Church of Scientology, and the church interfered with the investigation from the onset. This obviously resulted in the LAPD hitting a brick wall, and then the case went dormant for close to 20 years. So when these allegations first came out, there was a lot of people from the Hollywood community that stuck behind Masterson. And some of them even wrote character letters to the judge praising him. Fellow actors from that 70s show, including Ashton Kutcher and his wife Mila Kunis, were 2 who came out supporting them publicly. They didn't want to believe it, but their careers ended up suffering because of this. And this guy must have been liked because everybody in the beginning was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Nobody wanted to believe that these allegations were true. I think most people thought this was just another feeble attempt by 3 women who were colluding with each other and who were looking for a quick money grab. But apparently after a 4th victim came forward and filed sexual assault accusations, people started to see a pattern and the writing was on the wall. Obviously, Netflix had no interest in being a part of any Hollywood scandals and wasted no time canning them. Then a few weeks later, a fifth woman came forward who I believe is the wife of Cedric Zavala and claimed that she was sexually assaulted. After this, he was canned again, this time by the UTA, the United Talent Agency, which I assume means that he was banned from acting. So a total of 5 different women made accusations against him. But as you guys know, in the end, after a mistrial, lengthy litigation and appeals, he was ultimately only convicted of assaulting 2 of his 5 accusers. So trip on this. After he was convicted, 4 plaintiffs who had all been members of the Church of Scientology then moved forward with filing a civil suit against Masterson and the Church of Scientology for harassment. Now, I don't wish prison on anyone, but at the same time, when it comes to crimes of moral turpitude involving women and children, from my understanding, he was sentenced to 30 years to life and won't be eligible for parole until sometime around 2042. He's got a hard road ahead of him, and that prison, it's not a good place for sexual deviants. I'm pretty sure he's learned that by now. I mean, they're gonna keep him buried in protective custody, but even in protective custody, this doesn't guarantee his safety, and this doesn't mean that he's exempt from being victimized. The bottom line is nobody has any sympathy for anybody who preys on women and children. And that's just the way it is, including the people that are paid to protect him. But anyways, after I started looking more into this, I found out that actress, Leah Remini, she's the one that kind of got the ball rolling with regards to the investigation on Masterson. And this is how the Church of Scientology's dirty laundry was aired out publicly. So the Church of Scientology was founded by L. Ron Hubbard, but is now led by an individual named David Miscavige. His wife, Shelley, used to run the church with him, but she disappeared and hasn't been seen publicly for years. LAPD did track her down and they confirmed that she's alive, but she hasn't been seen out in public since 2007. So one of the most interesting things about this church is that there seems to be a lot of prominent Hollywood actors that are either members of the church or who used to be members of the church. Some of them are still members to this day, and others, such as Leah Remini, Katie Holmes, and Nicole Kidman, they all got out after realizing what the church was really about. And many former members claimed that they were followed and stalked after they left. In fact, Katie Holmes had to go into secret squirrel mode to escape the church's wrath. According to everything that I read, she had to enlist the help of her family because she was fearful of her life. And when her family helped her transition out, Holmes was so terrified that she constantly was having anxiety attacks. I remember when all that was happening. I didn't know the intricate facts, but I just remember in passing seeing the news and remembering that Katie Holmes went through something like that. Some of you might even remember it as well. Her family had to do everything from use burner phones, they had to rent cars, perform counter surveillance tactics, and perform spy-like maneuvers in order to get away from the people who were tasked with following her. They were on her ass. I'm not saying they were going to do anything to her physically, but I know they were trying to catch up with her. So here's the other interesting thing. Tom Cruise is also a member of the church, and he's one of the church's biggest supporters. He's considered to be a radical believer, and he's very involved with the church. I was never a big fan of Tom Cruise's either. Top Gun and The Outsiders were okay, but the people that are close to him say that he's a weird and strange character, and he even has his kids involved with the church. And the only reason Nicole Kidman and Katie Holmes were obviously involved with the church is because they were married to Tom Cruise and he had influence over them. But as soon as the marriage was over, that's when they got out. And one of the reasons why Tom Cruise has so much influence within the church is because he donates millions of dollars to the church annually. And that seems to be a common theme with the church. The more money you donate, the faster you elevate and the faster you're promoted within the ranks. And that's the other thing that's kind of interesting. What other churches do you guys know that have a ranking system? I mean, it's not just these little things that I'm pointing out. It's the totality of everything cumulatively together that makes you look and say, man, what's going on here? How does that play into the core beliefs of this religion? So within the ranking system, there's 8 levels, and they're all called operating thetans. Churches have always been very careful about their practices when it comes to asking for money, and there's different ways that they disguise it. But here's something else that I learned when I was reading up on this stuff. Like most other churches, they ask for about 10% of your annual income, that you donate 10% of your annual income to the church. That's what they ask for. But because they have this ranking system, the church then imposes a mandated training charge in order for you to keep elevating up the levels. That's a pretty slick way of getting it in. It's just like going to the bank for the first time and you trying to open up an escrow account and you have no idea how to do it. But the bank charges you, a training fee in order for you to open up that account. That might not be the best analogy, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. Elevating to each level will run you about $9,000. And by the time you reach that 8th level, you've already paid out around $65,000. Imagine that. They make about $65,000 from its members that elevate through the ranks. And that's one of the goals, is to elevate, to gain status within the church. And when you're a breadwinner, the church protects and promotes those who give lavishly in donations, who are famous, and those who benefit the church. And of course, they do everything possible to protect themselves, including lawful and unlawful methods at the expense of its members. So Danny Masterson was convicted for deviant criminal conduct, which means it's highly unlikely that these women were his only victims. That's an assumption, but again, when you look at the totality of all the facts, everything that's involved, it leads you to believe this. To believe this zebra changed its stripes and stopped attacking women for close to 20 years is unrealistic. And here's the other crazy thing that I read. These assaults that occurred were known by other members of the church, but they were dismissed, covered up, and ignored. Where's the moral compass in that? I'm not trying to slam this church. I'm just bringing you guys the facts. I'm not a religious type of guy either way, so I have no dog in this fight. I have an opinion, but it's not slated against this religion, against this church. I know nothing about it other than what I've read up on. So if there's anybody that's affiliated with the church that might be watching this, or if there's anybody religious within the Church of Scientology, I apologize. Those are not my intentions. All I'm trying to do is raise a little bit of awareness and shed some light on the facts. That's it. That's all. So per the victim's statement in court, the church showed her extensive policies in exacting ruinous punishment on defectors who speak out against its prized members. All of which obviously encouraged Masterson to continue his criminal behavior because the victims were viewed as insignificant and unimportant. There's been an enormous amount of attention on Masterson's prison placement, his activity, and his status. It's unbelievable how much attention is being given to him than from the thousands and thousands that have been convicted before him. But I get it. He's a Hollywood actor, a prominent Hollywood actor. A lot of people obviously knew him, and it is what it is. In the past, the prison system has housed a lot of celebrities and other well-known people, including Robert Downey Jr., O.J. Simpson, Suge Knight, R. Kelly, Bill Cosby. All those guys I just mentioned didn't fall in the category of sexual deviance, but a few of them did. But again, it's puzzling as to why Masterson has garnered so much interest. But then again, learning about his crimes and the extent of his deviant ways, maybe Masterson, maybe he does warrant that kind of attention. But anyways, let me get back to the church. There's just a few other things that I want to touch on with regards to the Church of Scientology. So the church operates worldwide, and in European countries, it's known as a dangerous cult and a manipulative profit-making business. Those are not my words. Those are words that have been echoed throughout European countries. That's how they see the church. So it's run by a select few at the top of the food chain who report to no one. thereby maintaining its financial secrecy. The money trickles up to the top and it stays at the top. There's no bookkeeping. They don't have to report to nobody. So they appropriate the money as they see fit. So as of 2015, the church's annual revenue stream is about $200 million. As of 2022, the church has a book value of $1.75 billion, with $1.5 billion of it tied up in real estate. It's difficult to understand how and why one would be drawn to a religious organization that operates under a cloak of darkness, secrecy, intimidation, and stop. Why would anybody want to subject their family or their kids to a church, a union, a movement, an organization, whatever it is? Why would anybody want to subject their loved ones to something like this that operates under this kind of belief system? They're known to apply aggressive physical tactics to discourage those who speak out against the church. You speak out or you run your mouth and you're going to get a beat down. Their practices and their teachings that they put forth are consistent with meticulous and systematic brainwashing. That's what it is. Their core beliefs and their belief system are instilled within their members, and then they're controlled. And they actually have their own HHPs, household policies. And some of the church's own policies dictate that those who speak out or divulge information are to be ostracized, even by their own family members. If you're a part of the church, if you're married, you have a wife or your kids, or you have other family members that are associated with the church and they speak out against the church or they leave the church, they're ostracized. You're put on the shine, leva, cut loose, excommunicated, your water's cut off, and it's on sight if they see you. Nah, but all BS aside, these are their policies and they're open. And here's the other thing. Why would the Church of Scientology, why would they need armed guards throughout their many compounds? They got guards posted up with bangers ready to take flight on people. And then, like what happened with Katie Holmes, why do they pursue, videotape, track, and follow those who leave the church? Why not leave that to the discretion of its members? Why is it considered almost like a mortal sin to leave? Those are cult-like tactics that they're applying. I mean, they might have a good explanation about why they do that, why they run their church like that. Maybe they do. But without those answers, without those explanations, if it walks like a duck, it looks like a duck, it must be a duck. And then here's a cold one. And I want to be careful about how I say this. These are not my words. These are in quotes. I read these in quotes. And you guys can do your own research on this stuff. Google it, look it up. According to some of the accusers and other things that I've read, the church apparently condones underage sex with any women. I mean, with regards to the investigation, why silence the victims? Why would the church have any interest in that one way or the other? Why not let law enforcement do what they do, run their investigation? Why are they going out of their way to silence these victims and to shut them down? Where there's smoke, there's fire. There has to be a reason why they have a vested interest in pursuing this. That's just not what your traditional church does that little Sally and Johnny go to on Sundays. When victims did complain, they were given a choice. Be assigned to a work camp for misbehaving or marry your abuser. That's crazy. You know, Danny Masterson and others like him found a safe haven to practice and perfect their demented, sick behavior without prying eyes or legal consequences. To sum it up, that's what it basically looks like. He didn't operate in a bubble. Others condoned and conspired to protect those that were being accused. Why? The only thing that makes sense is that they were profitable. You know, as more members of this church continue to walk away, I'm sure more damning information will come out. Now that the cat is out the bag, so to speak, it's eventually going to surface. more attention is going to be given to this, and people are going to start prying. It's obvious that law enforcement and the federal government needs to pay closer attention to organizations that operate like this, especially when their methods and practices include interstate human trafficking, child abuse. But on a closing thought, this is the kind of world we live in today. Our freedoms have allowed us to invest or apply ourselves to whatever spiritual, religious, or political beliefs we see fit. That's the beauty of a country that affords us these liberties. But on the flip side, our society has become compounded with the moral fabrics of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, and what's true or false, that we've become pre-programmed to judge, scrutinize, critique, and condemn. Is that a bad thing? That's for you to decide. Maybe it's not a bad thing, as it's also a way to administer checks and balances when there is none, a form of protection. Because the reality of it is this world is full of some very savvy, manipulative, conniving, and ill-willed people. Organizations, religious sects, political parties, and other movements that all have ill-willed agendas. Be smart and mindful about your investments and whatever religious beliefs you decide to follow, especially when it involves your kids. They follow your choices, and they depend on us to lead them down the right paths. Be smart, people. Be vigilant. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Paradigm Profiles. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. But either way, drop a comment and let me know what you think. As always, we want to extend our appreciation to all of you who have helped us get the channel to where it is today. You guys are the ones that deserve the credit, as we wouldn't have been able to do it without your support. We have more content dropping. Stay tapped in. From time to time, I usually put updates in the community to let you guys know what we're working on or when we have something dropping. So slide through the community and check to see if there's any updates. On that note there, this is your boy B, and I'm out.